Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Come unwrap some holiday magic this season in Denver, where the lights are brighter and the shopping is grander. The shows are more spectacular, the trees taller, the festivities merrier. So come for your holiday traditions or make some new ones with your friends and family in the Mile High City, where the season feels a whole lot more wonderful. Discover great hotels and more things to do at milehighholidays.com.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Hello, my loves. Happy December. It's me, your host, Elena Grace, and you're listening to another episode of I've Been Thinking. Now, today, I bring to you a Christmas classic. For our December book of the month, we are discussing Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And we're going to be talking about the importance of this book for one of its most important themes, that of greed, generosity, and forgiveness. Now, I chose this book firstly because I am really feeling the theme of forgiveness lately. Why exactly? Frankly, I am unsure. Maybe I need to forgive someone. Maybe I need to forgive myself. I'll figure that out later. But I think also that as we move through the holiday season, the idea of forgiveness is really important. Sometimes we hold grudges, maybe, against friends and family that are unnecessary, and we should just forgive those and move on. Maybe, they hurt your feelings last year over something stupid or whatever it was. Now, if they're bad or they're toxic people, that's a different thing. Don't get me wrong. But if it's, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes we just have to let it go because that's more unhealthy for us to hold on to those than it is, hurting them. But also, I think that we have a lot to forgive ourselves for during the holidays. Whether you're overcoming mental illnesses and you need to mindfully give yourself grace about maybe eating a food that scares you and you're not usually comfortable with, or about having to set boundaries with your parents maybe, or feeling like you're not as accomplished as someone else at that table. There's a lot that goes on during the holidays that can make it a really hard time for us because there's all these obligations that society and tradition places on and around the holidays. And it's a very heavy time, and which sucks because it should be a time about fun and love and celebration. But so often it's not. So often it's a time that people dread. And I would love to see us move away from that and move towards loving ourselves enough that we can celebrate the holidays in the ways that make us the most happy. But anyway, I digress a little bit. I also chose this book for the reason of those themes of generosity and greed, like I mentioned before. Y'all, my love language is giving gifts. Like, I will be honest with you. Right now, I'm not well off financially at all. I'm fine, but I don't really have extra, But I will spend the money I have on buying gifts for the people I love because that is what I love doing. And I really get that from my dad. That man loves buying a gift any time of the year. He loves to surprise somebody with something. My mom does it too, but I really think of my dad when I think of gift giving because that's just, he gets such joy from it. But for that reason, I think that highlighting the joy that can be found in generosity is so important. So many people focus on the greed and on getting things. And yeah, it's cool to get gifts on Christmas. But to me, there's so much more. It is so much better to put effort into figuring out what makes you think of someone, what you think they need, or what you think will make them happy. That's good shit, y'all. That's good for the soul. So, for all of those reasons, I chose A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, like I said. And I just really wanted to explain that to you a little bit so that you understand where I'm going as I talk about this book with you. So I'm going to start off by summarizing the book, okay? You've probably seen the movie or read the book at some point, or at least read an excerpt or something. There's a Mickey Mouse version of this, and honestly, the Mickey Mouse version is one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. I am not lying to you. I freaking love it. But this is iconic. It is literally a classic. There's so many references out there. You know this. But this is the this is the Spark Notes summary of it, okay? So the book begins with this mean old man, Ebenezer Scrooge, sitting in his counting house, which is where he did business and kept his money, on a freezing cold Christmas Eve. He's working on Christmas Eve, okay? That is scandalous. And his loyal clerk, Bob Cratchit, is shivering because Scrooge refuses to spend money on keeping his spaces warm. He doesn't even want to spend the money on having a fire. And they're sitting there and some people swing by. So first, Scrooge's nephew, Fred, comes by to invite him to his annual Christmas party. And Scrooge declines very rudely. And this is where we get the original iconic bah humbug. And then two gentlemen also stop by asking for donations to a charity for Christmas, which Scrooge, of course, basically tells them to F off too. So later that evening, after his work is done, Scrooge is back at his apartment in the dark and the cold because he refuses to keep the lights on. I mean, this is, Victorian London, so he refuses to keep the oil lamps on, but you know what I mean. And he refuses to keep fires in the fireplace. And he's sitting there chilling in the dark, and he is visited by the ghost of his dead business partner. Now, this ghost tells Scrooge that as a punishment for his greedy, self-serving life, his spirit has been condemned to wander the earth, weighted down by heavy chains. Wow. And he hopes to save Scrooge from sharing the same fate in the afterlife, and warns him that to do this, 3 spirits are going to visit him over the next 3 nights. So Scrooge is like, what? And then the ghost disappears and Scrooge falls into a deep sleep. The first ghost of Christmas Past rolls up, hits him up. It's this little childlike spirit, brightly glowing. In the Mickey Mouse version, his little head is like a little candle flame, okay? And the ghost of Christmas Past takes Scrooge into his past, visiting previous Christmases and important moments in his life, like his apprenticeship to a kind and happy man when he was younger, or the time his fiancée left him because she realized he would always lust for money more than he would ever love her. Shit, that's a call out. That is so sad. Then the ghost of Christmas Present comes. He is this massive, giant man wearing a rich green fur robe, and he's just luxurious looking. He is jewel tones and, lavishness, right? And he flies Scrooge through London to show him how Christmas will happen that year as things stand right now. So this is where Scrooge finds out how badly off the Cratchit family is. That's his clerk's family. And he watches them pull everything they have together to prepare this super meager little feast in a meager little home. They've got this huge, massive family, like tons of kids, and so little to provide for them with. And that's where Scrooge sees Tiny Tim first. That's Bob Cratchit's crippled little boy. And he is just so kind and courageous and has this really humble heart. And Scrooge's heart starts to warm up like the Grinch. His heart is like growing 3 sizes at this point. Then the ghost of Christmas Present zooms Scrooge over to his nephew's warm and vibrant home, full of people and merrymaking and happiness. And Scrooge is just absolutely delighted by the party. And he wants so desperately to be a part of it. He literally begs the ghost, please let me stay until it's all over. I want to see everything. It's so much fun. It's so beautiful. So at the end of their time together, the ghost of Christmas Present lifts his coattails and reveals 2 starving children that live beneath his coat, named Ignorance and Want. About the time the ghost of Christmas Present fades away, the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come shows up, okay? So finally, he walks Scrooge through a series of scenes related to a man's death, and you don't know who this man is, but you kind of get the vibe that Scrooge is getting a little worried, right? And the most poignant scene is when this poor couple find out that this man has died, and they are so relieved because he was this strict, unforgiving creditor, and they could never get ahead because, he wouldn't give them room to breathe, So Scrooge begs the spirit to know the name of this man whom so many people were relieved to be rid of, and suddenly he finds himself in a churchyard, looking at his own headstone. Scrooge breaks down, which same, I'd freak the frick out. And he begs the spirit to alter his future, and he promises that he will change. So now Scrooge wakes up. He is tucked in his own bed, and he is just overjoyed to realize that it's Christmas Day. He's not slept through it all. He has an opportunity to change, So he sends a massive turkey to the Cratchit home to provide for their massive family and kind of supplement their meager means. And he shows up at Fred's party, and everyone is surprised, but he's welcomed in with open arms, and everybody is just so grateful for these changes that he's suddenly making. So over the years, he honors his promise to the spirit, and he celebrates Christmas lavishly. He donates to charities, and he provides gifts for the poor. And he treats Tiny Tim like the child he never had. And ultimately, he learns to treat his fellow humans with kindness and with warmth. And he learns about generosity and how amazing it is and how important it is. Now, let's talk Uncle Scrooge and his character development real quick. He is miserly. He is greedy. He is iconic for that. He hoards all his money up, but he is so cheap that he doesn't even keep a fire in the fireplace to warm his home. Like, much less his workspace, he doesn't even warm his home. And not surprisingly, even though he holds such wealth, he doesn't take care of the people who work for him, and he doesn't create relationships with people. And for these reasons, he is truly the poorest person in the book because he lacks those things that give you richness of life, I suppose you could say. So the book is constructed in such a way that we see Uncle Scrooge become aware of the fact that he's missing this major part of his life, right? Thanks to the Ghost of Christmas Present especially, Scrooge realizes that his nephew, Fred, lives this warm and joyous life where he generously invites everyone in. And he even invites his crotchety old uncle, who relentlessly and rudely turns him down. But Fred doesn't ever make fun of him or talk down about him. He just feels sad for him and feels sad that he doesn't accept or give warmth and love. In a similar way, Bob Cratchit, the father of Tiny Tim, he gives so generously to his family, and he works so hard to ensure that they always have what they need, like at the basest level, even though they live in cold and they do live in want. But the Cratchits have consistently forgiven Scrooge for the way he has treated them. Even though he hoards far more than he shares, they just feel bad for him because they know that it's because he's lacking something, and they feel bad that he doesn't have the richness of life that they have, you know? So that's why it's so important that Scrooge realizes what he's missing, right? He goes through this massive spurt of growth in this one like super traumatic night. And suddenly he wakes up to realize there's still time to be a different person. There's time to change. So he sends food to Bob Cratchit and he gives him a raise in a bid for forgiveness because Scrooge has recognized what he's done wrong and how he's wronged Bob Cratchit in particular, but all of humankind in general as well. And you know, the Cratchits, they're so grateful for his generosity, and they forgive him so easily. And you realize that they've forgiven him all along, over and over and over, and how they have felt so bad for him because they knew all along that he lacked the empathy and love that they had. He lacked the warmth that they had, even when they didn't have anything else. And the same kind of happens with Scrooge's nephew, Fred. This is presumably the only family that Scrooge has, by the way. Like, you don't hear about really anybody else, just Fred and his wife. So Scrooge shows up to Fred's home on Christmas, and even though Fred is ready for Scrooge to be like friggin' rude, he is instead given the warmth that he has always craved from Scrooge and the warmth that he has always given to Scrooge, right? And Fred just immediately forgives the mistreatment. Scrooge has realized what he's missing, and he takes initiative, and Fred welcomes him in with open arms because Scrooge has realized that Fred and Bob are generous and loving, and those are the things that make them happy, not money. Because you realize that the whole time Scrooge has been hoarding up this money because I think he kind of equates that to happiness. And it does take some convincing. You know, this is all this really big, huge experience that he goes through. He experiences his own death. Like, he's been reminded of his selfishness. He sees what he's been missing for all these years. He realizes how he's hurt other people. Like, that's a lot of shit, y'all. But Scrooge is able to take the step back and realize that money's not going to make him happy. It never has. So, all of this leads me to this question that I want to kind of leave you guys with. Why is it so hard for us so often to see the importance of generosity, of kindness, empathy, and warmth? I think that too often we focus on something, just like Scrooge did, and we miss out on these other things, right? So maybe we focus on providing a good life for ourselves and our family, maybe. But which is a fine thing to do. You want to provide for those you love. But then that devolves into an obsession with work and money. Or we focus on one thing or another, and it turns into something that's detrimental to us in the long run because it takes away from our mindfulness in the moment, and ultimately it takes away from our humanity because we're not experiencing life. We're just focused on doing this thing. And there is a big difference between living and living. You know what I'm saying? Scrooge realized that he was never living. He was just doing the motions. And I think that really scared him. That idea really scares me. I don't ever want to just be living. I want to always be full of life, right? With this, I implore you all, this holiday season, learn from Ebenezer Scrooge. We are all going through a hard year, but I so encourage you to be as generous as you reasonably can, because the fulfillment you receive from that will be so much more than if you were just receiving physical gifts. I really, truly encourage you to be kind, to be empathetic, to be loving and warm, to welcome people in with open arms. Well, maybe be careful doing that because there's a global pandemic, but you can do that without doing it physically. But I implore you to welcome friendships, to welcome love, to do all of that, to be open to life and to experience it warmly and kindly, and to try to leave a positive impact in your wake. There is nothing better than looking back and seeing the things that you did for other people to bring them a little bit of happiness. I'm a huge proponent of making yourself happy and of being selfish when it's necessary and all of those things. I think that helping others, though, is one of the best things that you can do for yourself, because that's a kind of growth and self-love that is just unparalleled. All right, y'all. Again, be empathetic, be loving, be warm this holiday season. I am so grateful for you all listening. I, as usual, am just so blown away by the community that we are creating. I want to remind you all to subscribe to the Patreon for early access to episodes for just $5 a month. And for extra content, on occasion, the $5 get that. But $10 and up, you get extra episodes every month. That's just super helpful in allowing me to continue working on this project. Make sure that you give us a follow on Instagram at I've Been Thinking Pod and let us know what you thought about this episode. Make sure to subscribe to us wherever you listen, and you'll get reminders that there are new episodes out. And if you use Apple Podcasts, definitely give us those 5 stars. Give us a rave review. I'm so appreciative. And also make sure that you recommend our podcast to somebody that you know. If each of you recommended to just one person, y'all, we could blow up overnight. It would be so awesome. All right, guys, thanks for listening. I hope that I got you in the giving Christmas holiday spirit. I loved doing this episode. I'll talk at y'all next week. Bye.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist, and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Salutations, my fellow food lovers. This is Chef Mark here from Johnny's Italian Steakhouse, and I want to tell you about our filet Oscar. This premium filet is topped with Johnny's lump crab cake, grilled asparagus, and our signature béarnaise sauce. But the start to any great night always begins with a killer appetizer. And I recommend trying out our jumbo pan-seared sea scallops with Brussels sprout slaw tossed in Johnny's hot bacon dressing. It is so good. I know that you will love my filet Oscar as much as I love preparing it, so come to Johnny's tonight. Johnny's Italian Steakhouse, Village Point Shopping Center, Omaha.